Hello. Wednesday. Is it? I think so. I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday. Okay, so welcome and thanks again for joining, anybody who's out there. Just a little note that if you're not familiar already with the practice, wow, showing my dirty socks camera. If you're not already familiar with this follow along practice, then just, and also if you are, good to have a reminder. It's a very sort of hybrid practice. I'm drawing on lots of different modalities, lots of different methods, and kind of taking it into my own improvised practice for general well-being, basically. So it's kind of a structure that you're really welcome to treat as an invitation for yourself to do your own practice. Sometimes that might mean following along with me exactly. Other days that might mean adapting a lot. And it depends person to person and day to day. Bear in mind I'm doing everything that is comfortable for me. So don't assume that the same things will be comfortable for you, basically. And definitely just follow your own comfort and your own needs and your own desire. Yeah, sometimes this is just a break. Sometimes this is like the only movement I do in the day. Maybe it's the only movement you do in the day. Other times I'll go for a walk afterwards, or I'll do some handstand training afterwards, or I'm teaching Pilates afterwards, or various other things. So really take it wherever you want to afterwards, or maybe this is your cool down from whatever you've been doing already. Really, I just can't emphasize enough to only do what's comfortable and divert whenever you want into whatever is interesting for you. So I'll talk in the first person as usual, as a sort of monologue to guide, to voice what I'm doing, to act as a guide for you. And that's in terms of my movement as well as my awareness, what I'm thinking, what I'm sensing. I'm going to take my socks off. I'm going to start by taking my socks off. And then I think I'm going to start by lying down. No, I'm not. already changing my mind. I'm just going to start by standing up. Just to have a mini scan in standing. I always have to try and find a little bit of even carpet. And then I'm going to close my eyes and just see what it's like to stand. And I notice where I put my feet. And I'm not trying to stand correctly or in any particular posture. I'm just noticing how I am when I'm vertical. All sorts of funky things going on in my spine. I'm not trying to correct them, even though I know that anatomically, if I were to look at a skeleton, it's not optimal posture that I have right now, but it's where I'm at. Literally just accepting that is so hardcore. It's not that it gets easier the more you do it. You just get better at the practice of accepting, but still need to work just as much on the accepting. So I noticed anyway that I stood my feet in parallel, and actually that's not where it's most comfortable. So I'm just sort of stepping side to side a little bit and letting myself reframe my standing, because I could sense that I was really uneven on my two sides. So I just want to shift my weight side to side a little bit and not force my feet into parallel, which I did without even thinking about it, but just because I know that that's what I teach often. So letting my feet come to where they're actually comfortable rather than parallel. Oh my god, the secret's out. And now that my feet are where they want to be, I can feel how different they are. And I shift a little bit of weight from one foot onto the other. And I just see what that feels like. Really just noticing what a different experience it is being on one leg and being on the other. Just looking down at my feet to check where I am. And using the standing to let go gradually. And then just leaving the side to side motion for a moment. So at the moment, I'm just going to say it out loud for myself. At the moment, I feel I'm really much more over my right foot and my left heel. So I haven't really got any weight, relatively speaking, on my left toes. And I can feel a kind of tension in my left calf, compression in my right hip. So I'm just noticing, kind of scanning up, noticing. I'm going to just lift one arm and then lift the other, letting myself do that in any way, letting my weight shift a little bit to accommodate that. So I'm not trying to fix any kind of posture. I'm just lifting one arm and seeing what happens. Noticing also just what my preference is. Like right now, not interested in that left side, don't like it. Right now, just could happily stay over here on my right side for ages. This feels so stable. Just bouncing on one leg at the moment. Just to sort of see like how stable I am over my right leg at the moment compared to my left leg. Ugh. Fine. Trying my left leg, lifting my arm, balancing. Just not into it so much. It's not like it's even difficult actually. I feel more stable than I thought I would on my left leg, but just not really into it. So letting that go, closing my eyes again, coming to standing. Little step side to side, just to again let go of any idea of where I should be and just stand, and then come back to standing on both feet. Noticing how I'm standing now. And then doing a little action of shifting my weight forwards and backwards. And I want to do that so small that it's really no effort whatsoever. And I'm not tempted to lift my heels or lift my toes to balance. I'm even trying to keep it small enough that I don't need to grip in my toes or grip in the front of my ankle. And then I play with letting my head and chest do different things and my pelvis. So I'm just opening my eyes and then keeping my eyes open when I want, closing them when I want. So just to be a bit more specific, I'm going to sort of try to stand tall and stabilize through my center just enough that I can shift my weight very fractionally, still very fractional, forwards and backwards, but without changing the alignment of my spine. I'm trying in this variation, I'm trying not to change the relationship of my pelvis to my ribs, spine, neck and shoulders. So I'm moving forwards and backwards like a pull. And as a result, I can feel the musculature changing, but my alignment isn't changing. Just have my hand on my back and my low belly to help me sense that I'm stabilized there. Feeling my weight still a little bit more of my right foot, but I'm not trying to correct that. And then I'm going to let go of that stability, and I'm going to try and keep my head in the same place in space. I'm actually going to put my thumb and finger on my cheekbone and my temple and try and keep my head in the same place and still shift my center of gravity backwards and forwards, but without moving my head in space. So that means some other stuff has to happen between my feet and my head to allow my body to move backwards and forwards without my head moving backwards and forwards. And with my hands on the side of my skull, I can see my elbows in my peripheral vision. I'm using my elbows to make sure that my head isn't moving backwards and forwards. So my head isn't moving backwards and forwards and my shoulders aren't moving backwards and forwards. So I'm seeing how can I shift my pelvis and my ribs and my belly back in different ways whilst keeping my head in the same place. I'm going to do the same thing side to side. That obliges different things to happen in my ribs. Breathe, because I felt a little tension coming into my chest, so and I could sigh that tension away. I'm just going to let my arms come down. I'm going to stabilize everything again. The closest I can get to a neutral alignment of the spine without excess tension. And then I'm going to shift side to side a little bit, still keeping both feet on the floor, but again coming back to being like a pole. So my weight goes over my right and my head goes over to the right, and then my weight goes over to the left and my head goes over to the left. It has to be quite small because just even the one I just did was a bit big because my one heel came off the floor. How do I shift my weight? What makes that happen? I can feel there's something in my foot. Am I really keeping the alignment? And then I won't bother bringing my hands up, but I just try and keep my head still and shift my weight without moving my head. Straight away I can feel movement needs to happen in my ribs, otherwise it isn't possible. I'm going to have my hands back on my skull again so that I can see my elbows, and my elbows help me keep a fixed point. And I'm going to make a circle. Circling the pelvis one way, the back rounds and bends and arches. And the belly comes in and out. Difficult for my breath. Always kind of made my breath go weird. Changing direction. It is certainly not perfect, but trying to keep my head and elbows still. There's a bit I can notice in the kind of a back corner of the circle. Even the fact that I call it a corner means obviously it's not a circle. Right back corner, not so easy for me. Oh, left front corner, not so easy. Interesting. Opposite corners of a circle, changing direction again. Watching my elbows waggle around even though I'm trying to stop them. And some fluidity coming in now. Change direction one more time. Ooh, my elbows are going all over the place. Take a rest. And just sigh and close my eyes. And I feel my weight much more centered, I notice straight away. I'm just going to bend and lengthen my knees a little bit so that I really feel that my weight is much more evenly spread between my 2 feet now. I relax my jaw. And I'm going to come to sitting. So I'm going to start with my legs long and kind of wide. I'm not in a wide straddle, but just long legs. And I can lean back for a moment and just slump. I'm just not worried at all about what my back is doing. I'm just turning my legs in and out. And then I'm gonna come up onto my fingertips, close my eyes, really drop my head, so I'm letting my head drop completely. And then I'm trying to feel where my sitting bones are. I'm just rocking a little bit backwards and forwards.
and feeling the bony base of the pelvis against the ground. Going backwards and forwards. So when I take my weight backwards, I'm behind the sitting bones. When I take my weight forwards, my head goes down towards the ground. I roll in front of my sitting bones. And as I do that, I can always just have a wiggle and let myself get more comfortable. I'm just keeping my head dropping down, my fingertips on the floor, either side of my pelvis somewhere. And as I do this, I can just sense the difference in my two sides. Particularly my legs. Just gently, slowly, 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 gently. Taking my weight forwards and backwards. I'm going to bring my feet together just to pause, resting and sitting. And I want to just do a little bit of work with the fascia in the legs. So I'm just softly using my hands to turn the legs. Feeling the flesh of the calves. Not really trying to massage, just moving the tissue around the bone and getting a little bit of movement of the bone as well. Fibula, the outside bone of the lower leg. I'm coming up with my hands to the inside of my thighs so that I can just get my fingertips softly into my hamstrings, the muscles in the back of the calf. And I'm just gently pulling my fingers in there. See that it is pulling my feet apart slightly. Different things happening in each leg. Each leg responds differently to the same, more or less the same stimulus. I just reset my legs. Give it a little shake here. I can really feel the difference in the tissue in the back of each leg. I can feel the difference in the fibre of the legs. Give them a little jiggle. And then holding onto my legs, hold it just underneath my knee at the top of my shins, and I'm just coming back to rolling my weight forwards and backwards on my pelvis. But now my feet are more or less together, and just have my feet wherever it's comfortable. And I'm actually flexing my feet a little bit to help me roll my pelvis. So I'm rolling my pelvis forwards and backwards. Still my intention is to feel my sitting bones on the floor. I'm trying to keep a soft chest and a soft back. And I can feel my head going up and down as my spine gets longer and shorter. And I roll my weight forwards and backwards and sense my sitting bones. And I come back to having my legs long and my fingertips on the floor either side of my thighs or my pelvis just to support myself a little bit. And now I try to, actually I want my hands a little bit further back than that. Now I'm going to try to roll my pelvis and keep my head in the same place. That means it is a much smaller movement. What do I want to do? What makes it possible? Trying different things with my feet, with the rotation of my legs, rounding my back and arching my back to let myself roll my pelvis. And it's got to be really unambitious because there's not a lot possible. Without tension, that is. Without tension. I know that I can get sweaty, warm up, press myself into the ground, do some hardcore hamstring stretches, but it's not what this is about. I'm about loosening things and integrating the different parts of myself
So rather than just overtraining my hamstrings, I'm trying to explore how do my hamstrings relate to the rotation of the hips, the alignment of the pelvis, the mobility of the ribs and spine. I'm just going to have a rest, bringing my feet in front of me, sitting however I want. And then I'm going to come into having both feet out in front of me, and my knees are now long. My feet are more or less hip width apart basically, and I'm just gonna have a little wiggle, feel my sitting bones again, and then start to lower my head and let my back round and round and round and round and round. I'm really slumping. I feel, where does my weight go when I do that? So I feel I've rolled my weight behind my pelvis, behind my sitting bones a bit. And then when I'm really rounded in my back, I let any tension in my neck go, so I can feel the back of my neck get longer as I give in to gravity. I'll take a breath, see how it feels. And then very slowly I'm just starting to lower my head towards the ground, towards my knees. Very slowly, really slow motion. And then I come back. And I do it again. And I come back. And gradually I notice that there are two versions, and in one version I'm taking some weight in my hands as I lean forward so that not all the weight is in my legs and my hamstrings. In the other version I don't take weight in my hands. It feels a bit more intense. Gradually I just keep going, exploring different versions. I close my eyes because I'm really interested in how this is passing down my back, and I want to be able to sense that I'm not keeping any tension in my back. I feel my pelvis rolling on the ground, I feel my sitting bones rolling. And then that's enough. I come all the way back up to sitting, I roll all the way up and I feel long, and I just see what does it feel like to be long. And I'm going to shuffle my pelvis forwards and bring my feet together again. Have my hands behind me, my fingertips facing forwards. And then I'm rolling my pelvis on the ground again. This time I'm kind of preset already behind my sitting bones. So already my tailbone is tucked under. And then I'm going to push my pelvis forwards, push my pubic bone down towards the ground. And stick my belly out, gently arch my back. I just roll my pelvis backwards and forwards. Try different things with my shoulders, rolling my shoulders at the same time. I just do some circles with my shoulders and I see how that feels. I notice that I chose to go forwards first with my circles. So then I try the other way. Circling my shoulders back. I'm really interested in the very top of my thoracic spine, the bit between the shoulder blades. I want a little bit more movement there. I'm just taking my time to soften into it and let different parts of my spine move. And I come back to rolling my pelvis and I let my head go up and down at the same time. And I just go gently into what feels pleasurable. I feel my shoulders moving. Feel my shoulders sliding on my back. Feels like a little bit of work around my shoulders, just because Not because I'm working hard there, but because there is a bit of tension. So I just go a bit, maybe a bit smaller. Come back to some circles. Trying to resist pushing into the tension, because I know the tension isn't there because I'm working hard, it's just there because there's a bit of chronic tension in my right side of my trapezius, in my right neck, shoulder area. I'm going to just take a lie down and rest. I didn't do a scan in line at the beginning, so not very scientific. Nonetheless, just noticing how I feel here. I'm going to bend my knees and stand my feet and just roll my pelvis a little bit. Rolling my pelvis, letting my belly move, letting my hips move. Letting my jaw be soft. I take both hands up towards the ceiling, and that changes the contact with the back of my shoulders and upper back against the ground, and I keep rolling my pelvis. And I'm just playing around with minute little differences. I stop rolling my pelvis just for a second, just to do the shoulders. So many possibilities of where my shoulders could be aligned. So I'm just playing with where my shoulders are as I now continue to roll my pelvis. How does the movement of the pelvis pass up through the spine, and how does that relate to my shoulders? I'm using my shoulders again to release kind of chronic tension in the fascia around the upper back, neck, shoulders, but also to explore how can I get a little bit more movement in my upper thoracic vertebrae, the bits like beneath the base of the neck and between the shoulder blades, the top two or three thoracic vertebrae. I'll just take a rest. Now coming back up to sitting. I'm coming back up to having my legs long. And this time I'm making sure that my knees face the ceiling. So my feet are, again, more or less in line with my hips. But this time I'm making the effort just to stop my feet turning out and to make sure that my knees are facing the ceiling. And I do the same thing as I did before. I start just by softening, rounding my back. My weight rolls behind my pelvis, behind my sitting bones. I let my eye line drop. I feel my heels pulling back a little bit as my belly pulls back. My back is rounding. I notice my weight tipping back, so I'm just going to go a little bit back into a bit of a sit-up. And I hit the laundry basket and come back again. But rather than coming up to sitting, I'm going to roll forwards, trying all the time to release my back. Noticing where I feel tension down the side of the spine. Noticing that the two sides are different. My sensation in the right and left side of the spine are different. Letting my head soften down towards the ground. And once I feel like I've gone basically as far as I can go without any effort, I just play with pointing and flexing my toes a few times, so I'm not at the end of range of my stretch here. I'm not pushing into a stretch, but I'm using gravity to get me into the beginning of a stretch, so that then when I point and flex my feet, I can really feel a lot of different things happening in the tissue down the back of my legs, and for me in the feet and ankles as well. And I notice what my belly is doing. And I let my belly out completely, and I see how that feels.
And then I draw my belly in completely and I see how that feels. I'm still going with the feet. Takes me a while to get my belly in. I have to kind of tuck it up inside myself. And once I've managed that, I can feel that I come lower. Without any effort in my back or my legs, I come lower into my stretch. Just because I've sucked my tummy in. I'm really thinking tummy above the pubic bone. And I can feel that my elbows have softened down onto the ground now. I'm going to have a little wiggle side to side because I can feel I need to just release my sitting bones and then I continue. And then I just want to hold on to my toes and give my toes a little squidge. And then I want to stretch my back, so I hold onto my feet and I pull my belly in and I pull my back away from my belly and I try and round my back as much as I can. And for anybody doing this who can't reach their feet, you can do the same thing, just holding the legs. But I'm just using my hands on my feet as like an anchor. Rounding my back, stretching through my toes. Wriggling through my toes, and then finally, I don't want to come up, I want to lie straight down, so I shuffle my belly, my pelvis. I like those confusions of basic anatomy, like when you mean to say elbow and you say arse. And I lie down. So I just notice how I'm lying and I change my arms on the ground to make myself more comfortable. I feel quite different from when I was last here. I'm very aware actually that the top of my back is in a greater contact with the ground, that bit between the shoulders that I was talking about. That feels like it now has a really kind of good contact with the floor, which I wasn't actually expecting particularly. But I also feel really aware that the front of my hips are opening up. Obviously I've been in that position with the front of my hips closed for a long time, and it's kind of a relief to have them open. I take my hands to my pelvis and I feel the bony structure of the pelvis from the crest at the side of the pelvis and at the waistline, around the front, just feeling the bony structure of the pelvis. You kind of lose the bony bit of the pelvis and get into the fibre and tissue of the muscles around the hips. I'm just going to take my hands and use my strength to create a compression of closing the front of my pelvis a little bit. It doesn't need to be too strong, but I want to be really firm. Making sure I can breathe. Making sure that even though I'm using strength in my body, in my arms, I'm not tensing unnecessarily in the chest and jaw. I look up a little bit and down a little bit with my head to keep my neck, jaw and eyes free. And I'm still pressing on this side of my pelvis. And then I release slowly. I release the pressure on the side of my pelvis. And I feel my pelvis spread out and open. I feel my belly spread out and get flatter. And I lay my palms back down on the floor and just rest for a moment. Now I'm going to come back up as if to sitting, but I'm actually just coming up onto my elbows. I'm going to take my feet back together and my knees wide. And I'm going to come back to rolling my pelvis, this time on my elbows. I'm bastardizing probably about like 15 different Feldenkrais lessons in one session here, just taking the bits I'm interested to play with right now. So letting my belly come in and out. I will feel a bit more powerful in my belly here. After the last thing I did, I want to use my belly a bit more, so I'm drawing my belly in quite powerfully as I tuck my tailbone underneath and push my feet together, and then letting my belly out. And my belly drawing in, pulling in, and then pouring, spilling out. That helps me roll the pelvis and helps me move the pelvis, move the hips, and I change the rhythm. And then I bring my feet to standing and I do the same thing. I change where my elbows and my pelvis are a little bit so that I'm comfortable, but at the same time I'm trying to keep my elbows quite narrow so that this action, my elbows being on the floor under my shoulders and my hands facing forwards.
I need to just let my head drop back for a moment. This position with my elbows under my shoulders and my fingers facing forwards, it just creates a restriction in the shoulders, in the chest.
So obviously it's a very different movement. What's possible here? I'm just going to try and do some circles with my belly and my back.
And I let my head go anywhere it wants. And I change the circle.
I let my head go anywhere it wants. And then I slide my pelvis further forward so I'm in more of a stretch with my shoulders. And I come back to trying to roll my pelvis up and down. But it's so difficult to stick my bottom out now. I can't even do it. I'm not going to push and try. I just tuck my tailbone underneath, sink my chest, and then go the other way by maybe like a millimeter, 2. Trying to still roll my pelvis up and down, but just accepting that with my elbows in this bind, in this constraint, it's not even possible. So I'm just looking for something, really a matter of a couple of millimeters. Breathing. Letting my belly still come in and out. Feeling how much movement there is in my ribs. I'm kind of playing with like a belly dancer thing. I won't show it. And like pulling in my low belly and then my upper belly and then my ribs and then just playing with the alignment of my ribs and chest and belly. And then I'm shrugging my shoulders, pushing my shoulders into and away from the floor, and I'm circling my shoulders. And I go the other way. And then I just give up and lie down again. And I lengthen my legs too. And I see how does that feel. Ah, it feels so good. Oh, this contact with my upper back against the floor, I'm really enjoying it. I feel I've been really stuck in my top thoracic vertebrae this morning. I'm going to come back up to sitting. Come back into this wider position that I was in at the beginning, but I want to go a little bit wider now. So my feet are wider. I'm in a kind of, for me, what's just a comfortable straddle. I'm not pushing to my maximum, but it is a straddle, not a pike. My legs aren't hip width apart, certainly. They're quite wide. I point and flex my feet a few times. And I can feel my sitting bones on the ground. And I shift my weight a little bit over one side because I can feel that that helps me. I'm kind of shuffling my pelvis on the ground. I just feel that this helps me get into a little bit of the tissue around the hamstring on that side that I've shifted over. I'm playing with different orientations of my pelvis. I'm rolling my pelvis forwards and backwards. Basically just using my own sitting bone to press into the tissue in my extensors and adductors, the back and the inside of my hamstrings. And I'm giving a little roll around there. And then I'm going over to the other side. I don't feel so much on this second side, but I do it anyway. I just look for different movements.
it's small, so it's the reason it's important that I'm not in my biggest straddle, I'm not at my end of range, is because then I wouldn't have this freedom to roll my pelvis around. And I really want the freedom to roll the pelvis without any strain. Even though it's so tempting to push into strain on this left side, where I know that, ironically, it's the side I need to be more careful with, the hamstring, but it's also the side that it feels like, oh my god, it would be so good to push into that stretch. But I know there's damaged tissue there, so I'm trying not to. And then I just bring my feet underneath me into kneeling. And I'm going to just have my hands on the floor so that it's very easy to shuffle my pelvis off one side of my heels and then off the other. And I'm closing my knees basically. I'm squidging my knees. I'm on a soft floor with a blanket, so it's comfortable. I don't want to do this with pain in my knees. Using my hands on the floor to get a really soft, kind of very kind of feline rib cage. And as I push turn to the side so it's a bit more visible, as I push my pelvis over my heels, I also round my back or arch my back. So I'm playing with the alignment of my spine as I roll my pelvis side to side, and that's changing what happens in my ribs with extension and flexion whilst doing this side bend. I'm also changing what's going on with my feet. I'm just having a wriggle through my toes. I'm going to tuck my toes underneath for a moment and come into crouching just to get some movement through my toes. So I'm circling my knees, really working into the feet in a very easy way, letting my knees go one way and the other. And then I'm coming onto my belly, taking my pelvis side to side, taking my heels side to side, taking my legs side to side. I'm just looking for rotation and release in my hips, and then a rolling of my pelvis side to side, so that my spine gets some rotation. And again, if I get this easy going up through my spine, then it's actually I'm looking to mobilise the area in between my shoulders still. So my heels go side to side, and then my pelvis swirls side to side. And I keep my belly free, and then I can feel this space between my shoulders moving. I turn my head the other way. And then I bend, and I just play with where my legs are in the air, where my arms are on the ground. Come up into a little bit of a back bend. So right now I'm just trying to open up the front of my belly, the front of my chest, and let my pelvis roll while I also roll over my quads, the muscles in the front of my thigh, because I'm a bit tight there, so I can feel that bit of a massage as I roll over my quads. And I'm just trying to open up the front of my hips basically. So after all of that forward bending, I'm just very softly opening up the front of my hips. I could do little army crawls here, forwards and backwards. And then I'm coming back into kneeling. And I'm coming to sit over my heels. And I'm still coming into this side bend of slipping my bottom off one side and then off the other side. And I'm just playing with where my spine goes and where my arms go, so that I'm side bending, but I'm also rounding and twisting, going one way, going the other way, rolling over my heels, rolling over my feet, mobilizing my feet, my knees, my hips, my spine, my ribs. And I make the movement of the side to side smaller so that I can vary what's going on with my spine and chest.
And keep my arms down and be more careful, more mindful with my chest. And I'm coming forwards and backwards now, sliding my hands forwards and backwards. And then I'm going to come into sitting with one foot crossed just in front of the other, so I'm not in a lotus, but I'm kind of cross-legged. For me, I've got my right foot closer and my left foot further away, but both feet are on the floor. And then I'm coming into this, sliding my hands forwards again, sliding only what's comfortable, and coming back and sliding in different ways, in different sequences. What's my head doing? What's my belly doing? I'm kind of waving through the spine and then reversing it. And I realize that I can come far enough forwards that I can then shift my weight onto my knees. And then I'm going to try and come back the same way. So I haven't changed the cross yet. This time I'm going to change the cross. So my left foot's in front, I slide forwards, I uncross, I cross over the other way, and then my right foot's in front. And I come forwards, I'm not changing over the cross, I'm just sliding forwards and coming back. Sliding forwards and coming back in different ways. Different size movements. So much rolling of the pelvis. How does the rolling of the pelvis relate to the spine? Change over the legs. Change over the legs. Opening and closing my chest. Rolling over my sitting bones. And then uncurling my legs, coming back into that straddle. And now just going softly down and making sure my knees are facing the ceiling, softly melting my back into this rounded position. And then drawing my belly in, softly drawing my belly in as I go down, 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 down. Not pushing into the strain I have in my left hamstring, just using my hands on the floor, actually my wrists personally, but using my arms, hands on the floor to stop me from dropping down too fast. Slowly breathing into it. Not going to my end of range at all. And then I'm pointing and flexing my feet here. And as I do that, I'm playing with whether my belly is drawing in or pushing out. These big changes happen in the alignment of the rest of my spine as I do that. Without any effort, I've just dropped down to my elbows without even thinking about it. Bending and lengthening my legs a few times. Again, I can only do that because I'm not in my end of range. Pushing my feet away from me, drawing my belly in. And then again, pointing and flexing my feet, drawing my belly in, pushing it away. Just want to be really clear that this could be, I could be doing the same thing here, higher up. I could be doing the same thing with my feet further together. There are so many possibilities and they're all related to the belly, muscles in the hips, the legs. And I just have a little wriggle around, shifting my weight now, side to side, just trying to roll over different bits of my knees, my hamstrings, bending my legs in different ways, really being kind of quite baby-like about where my feet go, and I'm just coming into sitting in different ways, sitting and kneeling, shifting weight.
Just playing with what's possible in my legs. The emphasis being on shifting the pelvis, so shifting the pelvis and using my hands on the ground. Maybe coming onto my elbows, shifting the pelvis. Sort of rolling, looking for freedom in the chest and shoulders. Using my hands to release my hamstrings again, give my calves and feet a squidge. Give my hamstrings, calves and feet a squidge on the other side. And roll onto my belly again to just open up my hip flexors a little bit more. And I'm gonna draw my low belly right the way in, so that it means I have to, I'm not really doing anything other than pulling my belly in, and that pulls me away from the ground. Shortening my belly muscles, shortening my belly muscles, shortening my belly muscles, shortening my belly muscles, and then slowly releasing them, releasing them, releasing them, releasing them, softly, 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 slowly. The slower I can go, the further I'll get in the release. Slowly, a bit too fast, a bit too fast. Never mind, I'll do it again. Drawing in my belly muscles, pubic floor too, pubic floor, sphincters, lower belly, pulling in, pulling in, pulling in, closing the front of my ribs, pulling in, tucking my tailbone under, really efforting here, really pulling in, as much as I can, pulling, 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 more, 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 and then releasing slowly, slowly, slowly. Even as I release, I keep working. Even as I release, I keep pulling in more, because I realise I release too much at once. It's hard to do and talk at the same time. Slowly, 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 slowly. Slowly, 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 slowly. Slowly, 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 slowly. It's not smooth, but I'm trying to make it smooth. I felt like it was a bit more gradual. I'm going to do one more. Breathing. Taking a deep inhalation, and then I'm going to exhale and pull everything in. I can't do it in one exhalation, it's going to take me a few exhalations. I'm going to use stronger breath to help me. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Really focusing on different muscles in my belly. Lower and upper. Ribs. Trying to suck my belly away from the floor, towards the spine. Woo. Working harder. More. And then start to release. Lowering myself all the way down into my belly to rest. So I've opened up the front of my body and the back of my body. And turn my head the other way. I just roll onto my back for a second just to see how it feels. Just interested to do a little scan there. Noticing my contact with the ground. I feel I've worked harder through my shoulders than I realised at the time. And then I'm coming to standing. I just pause. It's standing. Noticing what it's like to be vertical. Just standing, noticing how my weight is distributed now, and seeing what it feels like to lift one arm and then the other.